Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special bulletin. Echo, Marvel, Disney was a show. And yeah, I watched all 5 episodes. And after watching all 5 episodes of Echo, I don't get it. Who is the show for? Why should we care about Maya? How much plot armor can one character have? After going through 5 episodes, I'm going to give my thoughts on it. A relatively spoiler-free review. I hope you enjoy it. Stick around. Stick around to the end. If you watched it, hey, let me know in the comments. Do all that nifty stuff. I'm saying it a little ahead of time, but all in all, the character of Maya Lopez comes off as a spoiled, entitled child who doesn't take any responsibility for her past actions, her crime, her murder, in all 5 episodes. She gets handed powers from her past, from her ancestors, because from her ancestors because reasons, because plot, because it's in her DNA. Moves on like it was nothing. Puts her family and friends in danger, manipulates her cousins, blames her problems on her grandmother for abandoning her. Now, whether you agree with that or not, that's completely up to you, but the writing of this show is just, again, if we're supposed to sympathize with an evil character, then there must be some sort of redemption by the end of 5 episodes. And there is none. She lives a life of crime, of murder, working for the Kingpin, and come the end of the show, there is no accountability. There is nothing. In one scene, she goes toe-to-toe with Daredevil and is left alive. Even after Daredevil is taking out all of Kingpin's men. In another scene, flashback, this is all in the first episode, she goes toe-to-toe with Hawkeye at a time when Hawkeye is Ronin, and Ronin is eliminating everyone. And what does Hawkeye do? He just leaves, jumps out a window through no care, no thoughts, no whatever. Numerous fight scenes, numerous issues and complications. She's constantly surrounded by Kingpin's men with guns that never get used. This is an issue with writing and plot armor. Why wouldn't, if the Kingpin is trying to take Maya down, or at least survive to the next day, shoot her in the leg, incapacitate her in some way, shape, or form? But this is something that never happens. Clunky action scenes filled with moronic bad guys. That got old very quickly. She gets kidnapped. Maya gets kidnapped at one point and is never seen as any sort of distinct disadvantage. The character of Maya Lopez and Echo she's deaf with a prosthetic leg. But never throughout this entire show does anyone take advantage of that by people who are aware of this. At one point, she loses her foot after being kidnapped, and they just give it back to her. It falls off and just gives it back to her, and left alone in a room with many just makeshift weapons. And that's what she does. She makes a weapon, is able to get out, is able to escape to get the upper hand on the bad guys. Now, granted, in this scene, the only reason she is saved, yes, I'm going into spoilers, but who cares, because you're not going to watch this show. I do not recommend this show. In the end, she is technically captured because the bad guys have her family, her cousin, at gunpoint. So she gives up. She's not exactly beaten on her own. She just gives up. And apparently, it's so very frustrating. The only reason she lives after that is because Kingpin calls and says, do not kill her. Originally, apparently, the show started off as either 8 to 10 episodes, from what I've heard. I've heard two different stories, cut down to 6 and then to 5, which is probably the biggest blessing of this entire show, is only going 5 episodes. Was supposed to have been dropped in December, but for some reason pushed back to January 9th all at once. And if nothing else, that shows Disney had absolutely no faith in this show. Word is that all they wanted to do was forget about it. And after 5 episodes, with the writing and the pacing, it's quite obvious. Now, we'll give this show some props. Actually, no, not the show. No, maybe the show, maybe probably not. No, I can't give any props to the writers themselves outside of actually doing some research on a game that honestly looked nonsensical, but was a legitimate Choctaw or Native American activity back in 1400 AD. If you watch the show and you see the game, well, apparently it was anywhere from 100 to 1,000 combatants. Anyway, I will say kudos to Alaqua Cox for her athleticism, wanting to do her own stunts. If you watch my live stream, if you listen to it, I went on a bit of a rant, not understanding how someone with a prosthetic leg could do those moves and still maintain balance and power with a prosthetic limb, regardless of whether it's below the knee or not. Well, apparently, Alaqua Cox is deaf and does have a prosthetic, a below-the-knee prosthetic. So, honestly, kudos to her to being able to move around and still maintain her balance, regardless of my opinion of that scene where it was established that the prosthetic limb that she had was jury-rigged by her grandfather, and yet she was still able to climb around, but that's a whole different story. That is still a problem with the show, but again, kudos to Miss Cox for her athleticism, doing her own stunts. Bravo. However, that's about the most compliments I can give this show because Alaqua Cox is not an actress, and it shows. Maybe it's just her, or maybe it's the direction modern Hollywood wants to go with female leads, but constant, it just, this is a problem with female leads across multiple TV shows and movies. The female lead has one facial expression, stoicism. That's it. There's no emotion on her face, no happy, no sad, no concern, no worry. The main character, whether it's Ahsoka, whether it's Echo, is just this single face for the vast majority of the show, and it's getting old. As a character, there's little to no growth for Echo. I mentioned this before. There's no, outside of ancestors have your back. That was it. No struggle because ancestors are there. No real sense of danger because the bad guys are incompetent and absurd with their tactics. At no point is there any concern for whether or not Echo is going to survive whatsoever. Numerous times, I may have mentioned this already, she's just left with her leg. If you know she's deaf, use that to your advantage. You know she has a prosthetic leg. Take that away from her. Not sure what to make of the after credit scene in the last episode or what it means to the Daredevil and Punisher moving forward. I genuinely don't know. I'm not going to give that away. It will be interesting to say the least, to see how the writers accomplish their plan for Wilson Fisk moving forward. One other thing I will give kudos for is the staff and the actors for learning ASL for Alaqua Cox in the show, but it could have been handled so much better. Why have the people talking in the show while they're signing to Echo? She knows sign language. They know sign language. It would have been so much better had they just not spoken. The other issue is when they did speak while they were signing to Echo, they spoke so slowly that it affected the pacing of the show. It legitimately did. Not sure. It's trying to keep up with what they were saying if you did not have subtitles on, which you have to have subtitles on in order to follow what Echo is saying, what Maya Lopez is saying. So, sure, it took me a minute in the first episode before I realized that. It would have been more immersive to have any of the actors who were performing the sign language to simply leave the subtitles on. There's no reason for the characters themselves to be speaking. Ultimately, honestly, Echo felt like a meaningless little speed bump put out for no reason in the hopes that it wouldn't be noticed. All at once, they did not do that with What If. They did not do that with Ahsoka. Netflix does the binge model. Disney, from what I can tell, up until now, does the weekly release, or in the case of What If, they did the daily release over 9 days. Personally, that is a better release model in order to get people talking about it. But when you dump everything all at once, especially after Disney's track record, it leads everyone to believe that, well, maybe you don't have a lot of faith in it. You want it to be out there, you want it to be gone, and memory hold within a week or two. The future of Marvel does not look all that bright. And this doesn't give me any hope for Daredevil or Punisher or the character of Kingpin. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments. I appreciate you making it this far. Have a good one.